Okay, hi and welcome everyone. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. My name is Iman. I am a research officer from Clinical Research Unit. So today we will be having our MJH for our series 17, and for today's topic we're going to have this topic in which title Exploring Factors that Influence the Practice of Open Science by Early Career Health Researchers, in which this is the first time that we are going to appraise a mixed method study, because we have been for the past 16 series of our MGH, it was the all of the papers that we appraised were the quantitative study. So this was the first paper, right, Prof?
Oh, okay. I never realized that. Then
Yeah.
next one, so you'll be zooming into a qualitative paper, isn't it? Later,
Yes,
I will
correct.
have the paper in details.
Okay, so this is the paper in which that if you have not read the full version of it, you can actually scan the QR code on the screen. So I'm just going to give you around like 5 to 10 seconds to scan the QR code to
Mm.
get the full paper.
I wonder whether Iman, did you look into this particular journal, HRB Open Research?
Oh, not really,
Do you
Prof.
check, do you
Not
check this
really.
background? As I go and check this journal background, they actually apply a new publishing model,
Oh,
You see,
okay.
because I noted there's a V2 there. So it
Yes,
means,
correct.
yeah. So this paper or this publisher isn't with any commercial publisher. It's actually, I think, operated by Health Research Board by in Ireland. So they are all the manuscript once had submitted, they will actually also kind of editorial board, but they don't call themselves editorial board. They will actually check the quality and of the manuscript. So far, it actually fulfills certain criteria. Then they publish it. Once you
Mm.
submit, they publish, and then
Okay.
the peer review comes in.
Oh,
So you
okay.
version one and version two is after review, and
Mm.
the authors make revisions. So you can still see the first original version
Mm.
published without review, and then the revised version based on the reviewer comment, post publications. So this kind of publishing model is in the spirits of open science. So
Yes, correct.
they publish within 1 or 2 weeks. I think I read the author instruction. So you submit once the manuscript pass through the quality criteria is published immediately, and then the reviewer will be invited to comment, and the authors have the ownership of the manuscript, the so-called the journal papers, and they will revise, and the peer reviews would then confirm whether the authors has made the revision according to the comments. And you can see all that comments are there as well.
Yes.
Because when I try to look for appendixes, I don't know where they put the appendixes, because it's mentioned some of the informations are in the appendixes, so but I couldn't find them. I'm not sure whether you found them or not.
Yes, actually, they have this OSF website. So they actually uploaded all their revised and also their original papers, their appendices, their data, their questionnaires on that platform.
Okay, right.
Mm.
Back to you.
Okay. Okay. So, as Prof. Chu has mentioned, that this paper is mainly on open science. So, this paper actually trying to address the purpose of open science, in which open science aims to make research materials and results openly accessible and available as wide as possible, while the current research or the opaque research that we are currently doing actually limits the ability to build on existing research, and therefore there are many unnecessary duplication and also research waste, because we have been doing the same research, a similar research, and there are duplication of data as well. So in terms of the trend in open science, previous studies that have been conducted in UK, if I'm not mistaken, have revealed that the researcher awareness in terms of engaging in open science is still suboptimal, especially in terms of among the early career researchers, which is also abbreviation is the ECR, in which will be used throughout this presentation. So the previous studies also have highlighted that there are specific singular aspects of open science, such as data sharing, and these studies did not really focus within health research. So they are only focusing on specific aspect of open science like data sharing or open access publications. So what this study is actually trying to address is actually the current gap in which that the existing studies are predominantly quantitative in nature, and they have not sought to explore the qualitative aspect in terms of gaining insight and understanding on open science. So in terms of the definition of open science, there is no commonly accepted or umbrella definition. So open science is actually encompassing several areas, including open access, or open data, open source, and also open reproducible research. So as you can see on the figure on my right side, so the open data, the open science here can compass or can consist of open data, open source, or even open methodology, open peer review, open access, and also open educational resources. So it's actually quite a broad terms or quite a broad field when we talk about open science. So the objective of this study is to explore the perceptions and experiences of open science for early career researchers working in health research, as well as to explore the barriers, facilitators, and factors influencing their practice of open science activities. So let's move on to the methodology of this study. So first, in terms of the ethics approval and study protocol, so this study was approved by the Ireland NUI Galway Research Ethics Committee. And because this is a mixed method study, so this study is reported as per the COREX, which is the Consolidated Criteria for Reporting Qualitative Research Checklist. So you can actually scan the QR code here to obtain the protocol of this study, in which they also uploaded in their platform. Okay, in terms of the study sample and setting for this study was actually a convenient sampling where they actually invited participants from a 2-day introductory training workshop on open science held in the Republic of Ireland in April 2019, mainly for the early career researchers. So in this study or in this workshop, participants actually self-define themselves as early career researchers when they register for the event or when they register for the workshop, and there is no restriction placed on eligibility for those who want to attend to the workshop. So the participant actually define themselves or actually consider themselves as the ECR, and then they can actually register for the workshop. Okay, but then there are also other definition of early career researchers from previous literature in which that the ECR is defined as one who is currently within their first 5 years of academic or other research-related employment, allowing uninterrupted or stable research development following completion of postgraduate research training. But this definition was not employed in this study, in which that the participant themselves actually consider or define themselves as the ECR. So in this study, they are using the convergent mixed method design in which that both quantitative and also qualitative data is used. So in this study, the qualitative and also the quantitative data are collected differently. They are also analyzed differently, but then the results are integrated and also interpreted together during the interpretation phase. So this is what we call as the mixed method design. So during the quantitative data collection, so participants completed the study questionnaire before and after the workshop. So before the workshop, they have to answer the questionnaire in terms of the participants' demographics, such as the gender, age, and also which field of disciplines they are currently working on. And then in terms of the questionnaire, both the pre and also post questionnaires contains the closed and open-ended questions. So the questions will actually explore on their knowledge and awareness of open science components, and the initiative amongst the ECR for open science, and also what are the perceptions of the barriers and facilitators influencing their practice of open science activities. So these are the questionnaire survey for the quantitative data collection. And then in terms of the qualitative data collection, it was collected or it was interviewed in telephone or face-to-face by preference, by the participants' preference. So the duration of interviews are ranging from 13 to 34 minutes, in which the average of the interview session was around 21 minutes. And then the qualitative data collection were actually conducted within 3 weeks after the workshop, in which that those who have participated in the quantitative data collection were actually followed up within the 3 weeks, in which that they are being called or they are being telephoned, in which that it depends on the participants' preference. And the interviews were audio recorded and also transcribed verbatim by the researchers. And however, in this study, because in typical qualitative study, we would actually have two research team, in which that one would actually record the transcript, but another member would actually check the transcript whether it is consistent with the interview session. But in this study, only one research member were actually done the transcript, and there were no member checking of transcript because of the time constraint of this study.
Iman, do you know what's member checking?
Yes. It's actually in qualitative study, Prof. Usually there would be two research members involved in the interview session. So one would actually be together with the interview session. So I think there are only one research member were available at that time. So there were no another research member would actually check the transcript and with the audio recording.
Okay.
Only one person will actually transcribe the transcript from the audio recording. There were no member checking. There were no cross-checking of the transcript from the recording.
It's not the one like they check back the answer, the analysis result with the respondent, yeah.
No, I think this one is only the transcript from the audio recording. But this was not really explained in the paper lah. So not sure whether it's from the respondent or from the audio recording.
Mm.
But
Because
usually there would be two people doing the checking.
usually two people are involved in coding and thematic analysis. I think
Yes,
that
correct.
was described in the paper.
Yes, yes, that was
I thought
described.
I thought this member checking is participant or respondent validation, a technique for exploring
Mm,
the credibility of results. So they kind of, if I were interviewed by you, and
mm,
then you have recorded all my opinions and whatever I said, and then you also recorded all the interview from the other respondents, and then you analyze, and then you have some codes on that,
mm,
but you
yes.
actually select a few of the respondent and get back to us. You said, that day I interview about this and this, and this is what I get, and I show it,
Mm,
and you show it to me. I see. I say, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I mean. But this is not what I meant. That kind of thing.
mm,
So that's what is usually known as member checking in qualitative study.
okay.
But it's actually a
Yeah.
bit confusing. Even
Mm,
if say member checking of
yeah.
transcript, not
Yeah.
member checking of
Of
the
the
analyzed
analysis.
results.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so what I understood was actually I thought uh it actually the research member actually checked the transcript with the audio recording, but it also could mean like what Prof has mentioned. But it was not really described in the paper.
Okay.
Okay. And then in terms of the qualitative data collection topic guide, so their topic guide is actually developed by their own authors of the paper. And also another two authors were actually used to structure the interviews. So the topic guide was mainly to explore the participants' understanding and experience with open science, as well as to explore the perceptions of barriers and enablers to practicing open science with specific probes to enable deeper exploration of the topic in question. So you can see that the topic guide is available in the appendix 3 of the papers. So this is what are the topic guide that I have been using, in which that usually in the topic guide we would have the broad questions and also the possible prompt questions that we can ask as the follow-up questions. So as we can see here, the broad question first is on asking the understanding of open science, in which that the participants needs to describe their understanding of open science, and the possible props questions related with understanding of open science is whether they have had any experience of practicing open science, and because they have attended the workshop before, and these interview questions was actually conducted after the workshop. So what have they understood from attending the workshop, and what skills are necessary for practicing open science, and what are the incentive needed for them to practice open science. And besides that, they are also being asked in another aspect or another component in open science, which is the open data, and what are their understanding on open data, whether they have had any experience using open data, whether their understanding have changed after they attend the workshop on open data, whether they have the skills, the necessary skills to manage open data. And then they are also being asked on another aspect of open science, which is the open access publishing. Okay, and then the possible probes are also similar with the previous components. And in terms of the factors that they could have not discussed that might impact the use of open science, which is they could also being asked on the open source or open notebook, open peer review, open education, and also citizen science. And they are also being asked like an open-ended question in which that the participants will ask whether they have any issues that the interviewers did not ask them about the open science. So they are actually quite open topic guide here. Okay, so after they have conducted the qualitative interview questions, they move on to the data analysis, in which that the quantitative data were conducted, the analysis were conducted using the Microsoft Office Excel. And in this study, the quantitative data was just analyzed using the basic descriptive statistical analysis, in which that they are using the percentage distribution and median calculations only. So that is why they are only using the Microsoft Excel, and no SPSS were involved in analysis of the quantitative data. Okay. In terms of the qualitative data, it was analyzed using thematic analysis, in which that they are using the NVivo 12 software. So there are two phases of qualitative data analysis they have conducted here. So in the first phase, the first interview transcript that they have transcribed from the audio recording were read by one research member, and then it was coded into notes, which is named according to the content of the statement, in which that the similar topic or the similar content were actually coded into according to the content of the statement. And then the coding was actually an interactive process, in which that the code is not fixed. So the researcher can actually go back and just recode again or rename the coding to give a better idea of the content of the coding. And then after they have finished the coding, the NVivo file was sent to a second researcher to review the notes that the first researcher have conducted. So this is basically the thematic analysis, in which that it is an inductive approach to analysis that's moving beyond description into interpretation and telling the story of the data. So that's why from the transcript, they actually code the statement into specific contents of the statements. And then in the second phase of the qualitative data analysis, the NVivo's file was sent to second researcher to review the notes that the first researcher have conducted. And then from the notes, they actually gather the notes into teams. So these teams were generated and refined by two researchers through iterative cycles of discussion and review. So they actually review the notes from the first and second researchers, and pass to two another researchers who actually gather or generate the initial teams. And then the final teams, sub-teams, and their description were then reviewed by a third researcher alongside the transcript, which is this researcher also known as the critical friend. So the critical friend here actually review the teams, and then they compare with the initial transcript to ensure that the teams and also the transcripts were actually aligned with each other.
Okay, Iman, perhaps for some audience who are new to qualitative research, it's actually a process of having many textile, texture, text,
Mm.
in text, data in text. So you actually try to summarize them, giving them some similarity, given the same theme. So the themes could come out from similar codes. Yeah, there are many
Yes.
codes meaning there are some unique points for what they say, and then you try to
Yeah.
kind of a factor analysis. You make them
Mm.
there are many codes. It could be like 20, 30 codes. Then you make them into smaller teams,
Yes, correct.
and then you make it into smaller, even the kind of a title for it lah. If you're interested in more detail, as how to analyze qualitative data, we are actually organizing a qualitative workshop in July. Is
June,
it?
June, Prof.
Oh,
June.
June.
Yeah.
Okay.
End of
Yeah.
June.
Yeah. We have invited two very, very experienced qualitative researchers, and you may want to look out for it.
Okay, so this is how they actually analyze their qualitative data. And then to ensure the rigor and also the transparency of the data, they have conducted or they have taken several state strategies. So the first is the peer researcher. As you can see that they have involved 2 to 3 researchers to actually review and assess the transcript, image and final categories from those transcript and also the final themes of the findings. So they don't really rely on one researcher or one person to do it. So they have several person to do it to ensure that all the data were actually transparent and also rigor. And then they also have created a code book within the software, within the NVivo software to demonstrate the dependability of the findings to ensure that each code will actually represent the themes or represent the content of the statement. And then they also have the coding query function to illustrate the density of coded references from each participant across all subthemes. So this also has yield grounded data. So you can see that in the supplements of the paper, in which that in appendix 4, they are actually attaching the code books here. So as you can see, sorry if it's a bit small, let me make it bigger. Okay, so as you can see, first is the code in which that the code is taken from the statement itself. So they have the codes here, and then what are the description of each codes that they have assigned, and what are the example of the text in the transcript that actually represent the code. So this actually one of the way to ensure that their data is rigor and also transparent. So whenever that they are being asked or they are being asked by the reviewer or by the reader what does what or where the themes come from, so they can actually show these codes, and then what are the description of each of the codes, and what are the example from the text or from the transcript that can represent the codes here. Okay. And besides that, they also have the coding density in which that uh, this is the number of interviews that they have conducted or the number of transcripts. And then under each of the following themes. So this is the themes, the what of open science, the why of open science, cultural and academic pressures, increased accountability, and also striving to be open. 5 themes that they have actually gathered from all these codes. So under of each themes, they have actually have the coding density in which that how many codes are there that is gathered under each themes. So they are actually they have conducted this coding density in Microsoft Excel to see that the coding density for each of the teams. Okay. So we move on to the results of this study. So Prof, do you have anything to say on the analysis?
I would say they are they did a very I mean quite rigorous qualitative research. Um, and the appendixes, though I have not got access to it, but you already show it on the screen, so you can see that it's actually very very clear as how they get to the themes. But sometimes you may also kind of puzzle because qualitative is very inductive. If you are lost in the data text, you know, all the textual data there, they are actually it could be also inductive and deductive. It's kind of a combined methods where you have really guided by a certain theory. That's why in many research proposal you have theoretical framework, isn't it? So you could have
Yes.
something to gut how you want to thematically analyze your data as well. If you are not totally lost, if you have no idea what you want to, how you want to group them, you could apply certain theories, and then you put them
Yes.
in
Yep.
themes, but then you allow yourself to have extra additional themes lah.
Mm.
Yeah, so that is another way you don't feel like you're overwhelmed by all different kind of data. Yeah.
So I actually have pasted a link on the chat box to actually access the data and also the protocol of the paper, Prof. You can actually click
Okay,
on the
thank
link.
you.
The data register.
Mm,
Okay, so we move on to the result section of the paper. So as you can see that initially there are 40 participants invited or participated in the workshop, but only 14 agreed to actually attend or to actually involve in the mixed method study. So among the 14 subjects, majority were female and 4 were male. And then out of 14 participants, 4 participants had obtained a PhD in the previous 1 to 2 years, and 1 participant was actually 6 years post PhDs, and 7 were undertaking a PhD at the time of participating in the study, and 2 of the participants did not have a PhD. And in terms of the research area, majority were actually in the population health or public health services research, followed by the health sciences or allied health, and then the rest were actually from the health psychology, medical research, basic science, and also other field. And in terms of the work institution, a majority of the participants were in the university, followed by the non-profit organization, while the rest were in the private or NGO and the joint or governmental organization. And as this study were conducted in the island, so majority of the participants, which is a 13 out of 14 of the participants, were actually working in Ireland. Okay, so we will move on to the survey findings. So the survey findings were actually not really thoroughly described in the paper. So I actually had to look out for the appendix to actually look at the findings of the survey findings. So first we will look at the knowledge section of the survey, the quantitative findings. So in the knowledge section, the participant needs to rate on their self-reported knowledge of open science component, in which they actually being given several open science components. So majority of the participants rated high or rated high knowledge in terms of open science and open peer review, but then lower score for open education and also citizen science. And in terms of the awareness, the participants need to report themselves on how aware are they on the open science policies or initiative that is available. So most of them are aware about the Berkeley Initiative for Transparency in the Social Sciences. So I actually am not aware myself about this initiative, so I actually look out for this initiative. So it's actually one of the academic initiative in enhancing the open science initiative. It is actually conducted in US, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and then followed by other open science initiative. And in terms of the facilitators in which that supports the researchers for open science, so the factors motivating data sharing among them is actually they rated the score high in recognition in project or career evaluation, increased visibility and impact of research, and also standard for accountability and appropriate use of data. And in terms of the factors that can motivate the publishing of open access, is to provide free access to a wider audience, maximizing the visibility of research, promoting the work of researchers, better research assessment and monitoring, reduce publishing costs in journals, enabling the use of research data, and better career development and chances of promotions. And in terms of the initiative needed to support open access publishing, most of the majority, which is around 92% of the participant, actually rated high in terms of the funding from the institution to publish in open access, because as we know that most of the open access publications requires high APC, and followed by the raised awareness on open access publishing. Okay, in terms of the facilitators that supports for open sciences and open data, first is the institutional support for open science. So they take majority of them requires open access publication from the institutional supports. And in terms of the institutional support for data management, so majority of them do not know whether their institutional provide data management for open data practice. And then in terms of the barriers that support slaking for open science, so the barriers that were stated by the participants were actually in terms of the technical infrastructure, guidelines or policies for open science, or whether they have rewards in terms of reputation if they are participating in open science, as well as whether they have been given incentive in terms of career perspective if they support open science. So these are currently lacking in their institutions. And another barriers to sharing research data that is stated by the participants is one of the barriers is personal data protection and confidentiality, and also lack of institutional guideline for data sharing. So it's mainly on the I think mainly on the data protection issues. And in terms of barriers to open science, so what are their barriers to practicing open science is the lack of support and structure in terms of the funding or training, time, and also institutional buying. And facilitators of open science is actually the availability of support and structure, whether they have the technologies, funders, buy-in, training, and education. Okay, and then when they are conducting the thematic analysis, so they actually have generated a word cloud. So this word cloud is created using the software and Vivo queries to illustrate the most commonly used words when participants talk about open science. So this is actually generated from the transcript itself. So you can see that I think most of the commonly used words here is think, open, know, science, kind, research, and all other commonly used words in the interview.
Think open is one phrase or two words, huh?
I'm not very sure, bro. But if we're
Okay.
looking at the color here, maybe it could be like one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one
But I
phrase.
think here could be like I think. So that's why it's commonly being used.
Not sure whether
Like
they
I
ask
think,
for one
yeah.
word or
Oh,
or phrases of short
Mm,
words or what. Okay. Think and open and no.
open,
No. Okay.
kind research. Yeah. Interview around data, journals available, culture.
Mm.
Okay, so if you're looking the data, the qualitative analysis, so they actually have five. Is it five? Yeah. Teams here. So the first team is valuing open science. So under each team, there are also sub-teams that they have actually extracted. So under the first team, which is the valuing open science, they actually ask the participants on the what of open science. So in this sub-team, participants perceive open science as a broad umbrella terms in which that it is related with the openness across the entire research cycles. So it can start, the open science itself can start before a study start. For example, they're using the pre-registration, open notebooks until the research completed. For example, the open access publishing and data sharing. So in terms of the understanding of the open science, one of the participants stated that before the workshop, they thought that open science was only about the open access publishing and maybe just sharing the data. So they don't really know that the open science can actually means the whole process, which is from the open, which is from the beginning and also to the end of the research process itself. And when they are being asked on why should they support this open science initiative, so participants perceive open science to be important because it leads to better research and can lead to better overall impact of research for patients and also for the public. So as you can see in the dialog box here, you know that when we are doing something with ethical research, so when we have the open, transparent ethical research, then it can better inform what is supposed to inform the healthcare providers or what is supposed to inform the patients. And when the research is being done fairly, and then second, it leads to a more reproducible research so that others can build on that research and they know what exactly what you do. So the good transparency and open research is actually the cornerstone of doing good research. And another respondent actually stated that they suppose that a more transparent way of working, it can build a more capable research community and also avoid duplications, or when they want to build on smaller research studies that have been done, that it allows for knowledge transfer. So it actually more on in terms of knowledge transfer as well as avoiding duplication. And the team two is creating a culture for open science. So the first sub-team under this team is the culture and academic pressures. So current academic culture is a key factor influencing open science practices. For example, career development being measured on grants or publication in which that open science not valued as much. So one of the respondent in which that the early career researcher here stated that one of the challenges to engage in open science is actually to find the time, because they are also juggling with day-to-day uh, tasks as well as the teaching and also administrative tasks as well. And then besides that, um, they still have this sort of assumptions in which that open science is not seen as valuable, because if it's open science, then people think that it's easier to get accepted if it's open science, in which that everyone can access to your data, everyone can actually simply get to know what you are doing. And then in terms of the teamwork, if you are the only person who wants to do it, then you have to be the one who has to do it in terms of the support from the peer support. And then another one is in terms of the promotion or the incentive. If you want to continue in research, then you have to pay attention to those goals that you have to hit to get promoted. So if open science is not one of it, then it can be one of the barriers or the pressure that can hinder researcher to participate in open science practices. Okay, and another participants also said that in terms of the challenges around knowledge and training, there would also be challenges for a senior career researchers, because those senior career more is actually seem to not accept to what is new in the research. So they might not be very open in terms of sharing their data, in terms of supporting the open science itself. So in terms of changing the system, especially among the senior researchers, could also be one of the challenges in supporting a culture for open science. So do you agree with this point, Prof?
Oh yes, yeah, but it's very
I
hard
think
to
I
change.
think yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Is if when I think further, this generation is kind of a transition, people like me, we are not so senior and not so young. We are the
Mm,
persons who are going to kind of bridging this transition. If we are all kind of buying in to this open science, so my generation should make it the transition to happen,
mm,
so that the young, the ECR would be a new kind of generation with all the open science. We already start to see all these changes are happening. It's just that Malaysia, I'm not so sure whether this is not just Malaysia or Asia. We are still stuck or stick to the old way of research, rewards, and assessment. People are
yes.
moving already. People are start moving away already. We are still there, people that start departing for the destinations that maybe one third of the jalan already, but we are still, at the at the point A, still not still tak berjalan lagi, tak bertolak lagi, you know. But the time people already reach there, we may start, scrambling, wanted to pursue and catch up lah. Biasanya macam tu. Yeah, I not sure why, because that could be safety mechanism or what. People think, let them go first. Once they reach there, then
Mm,
we start going there.
that's right.
Maybe that's the way. Otherwise we should be seeing a lot of Malaysians explorer, go and here and go there, isn't it? Yang tak pernah pergi. So go lah, go to somewhere, do something that people have not done before. But were there any Malaysians in the history that become an explorer? Like what? Who? Like Marco Polo, that kind of thing. So perhaps that's not in our culture or what, I don't know.
Mm,
Yeah. So people are doing that because they see the importance of it. But I don't know how we can do this. But this is one of the facilitator, which is, as you said, making a lot of sense. If you put the currency there,
mm,
putting a carrot there, so
mm,
people, by human nature, because it's recognized, is incentivized. So the people's behavior would go to that way lah. So as a government or as a policy maker, if you think that's important, so give the currency there, give the rewards there. So people will go forward, go to them. And of course, you give the stick there, meaning to say you punish if you do something that you think is wrong. Then people will sway away from there towards the way that you think we all should move to. So this is very simple logic, very simple logic. But to make that transition and change, it's like you know to revive fossils or to resuscitate a dead body, or something you need a very strong leaders and champions. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Okay, so another sub-theme under the creating a culture for open science is the increased accountability and the challenges of transparency, in which that the increased accountability was discussed by many as a key factor for influencing the practicing of open science. Both can be a barrier and also a facilitator, because so one respondent was actually one of his or her concern was actually when they put up the data, someone would rerun it and say that you did this all wrong. So this is one of the concern of the transparency in open science. And then it probably creates efficiencies in the system, because if you are the name reviewer, and you would probably respond quicker because you know that your data is there when people question or when people ask you on what data that you are put up or what are you are doing, so you can be more responsible to your own data. So you can see actually whether there are also conflict of interest as well. And in terms of the safeguarding of the data, um, one of respondents said that she or he would be completely happy to do it, but the idea of scooping and taking people's idea is actually worries them in terms of the taking the idea or using someone else's data wrongly. So this is can be both a challenge and also the facilitator of transparency in open science.
Do you agree to this point? That kind of thing, like your idea could be
Mm.
stolen.
Mm.
Do you agree?
I think some sort of yes, it could be stolen and be used strongly, or people can take out like the first point. Someone can actually rerun the data and say that what we did was wrong. I think that the point here is valid. Yeah. What do you think, Prof?
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's true. But isn't that good to have another pairs of eye to identify
Yeah.
to find out the problems?
Mm.
Uh, as compared to you leave it there and the one without sharp eyes, they just believe it.
Mm.
But without open science, you let it like accessible and smarter people or sharper eyes people can identify the problem. Everyone get to know it. It's like,
Yes.
isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I did something wrong. Is without intention. Yeah, isn't it? I analyze it. I
Mm.
think I've done it right, so I post it because open science. Then I make it accessible and open. But then there's another people who are more knowledgeable and experienced, and they realize I did something wrong. So instead of leave it there, and fool a lot of people and fool myself, then these people, smarter people come along and say, hey, you did this one wrong. Then everyone get educated. What?
Mm.
Of course, it's not, you will not
Yeah.
feel like, it's me lah who did the stupid mistake, that kind of thing, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
it
Yeah.
happens lah, isn't it? And of
Mm.
course, we hope it's not a grave mistake or you do it intentionally, but which one is making more harms? If you are actually pro science, if you're pro progress, uh, do you not want to admit you're wrong,
Mm.
isn't it? And for the sake
Mm.
of progress of science, of course, hopefully that does not kind of dire implications on your career or anything of that
Yeah.
lah, isn't
Mm.
it? So that part perhaps we have to make it clear that if you committed some wrong without intention,
Yeah.
that should not be penalized as something like a fraudulent, that kind of thing. And okay, so that's about feeling and knowing. If you can imagine that kind of stress, isn't it? Everything I put it out there, I got this wrong, that wrong, so many wrongs. But that will actually, I always tell my friends also, I mean, how many stupid questions can you ask?
Mm.
If you ask and the question got answered by smart people, then you become smart, and there will be no more stupid question from you. I mean, on that stupid questions. I mean, how many stupid questions you can ask? You cannot keep asking the same stupid questions. If you never ask and never get good answer, then you always got that stupid question with you, So which one do you
Mm.
want?
Mm.
You want to ask the stupid questions and then get smart because smart people answer you, or you want to keep the stupid question with you until forever, until you go to the grave, isn't it? So that's about that one. The other one is like, let's say you got very, you know, uh, fantastic idea, and you scared to make it open and get stolen, and then Steve Jobs come along and make it into Apple product. Is that
Mm.
is that a valid worry? What if you post it on your Facebook, then people steal it and then make it
Mm.
into a MacBook, and then you said that's my idea? Can that happen or not? Can
If
happen,
it's
isn't
not,
it?
yeah, it can happen.
It can
But
happen.
that's why we have the pre-registration lah. So at least our name is there kan, macam kita dah register or protocol or proposal.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
mean, if
yeah.
the open science is properly rolled out
Mm.
or practiced, I
Mm.
believe many of that so-called preprint, or if you make it available in a proper platform, it has
Mm.
always has the DOI and all that is
Mm.
stated.
Yes.
So this
Mm.
idea was from Nurul Iman,
Mm.
dated 26th of May 2023.
Mm.
Whoever that come after, if the idea is similar to yours, then
Mm.
they should recognize you instead of
Yes.
not
It
saying stolen or that,
stolen. Mm.
isn't it?
It actually
So
opened the door of collaboration actually. You can open
yeah,
the door for
yeah,
collaborations, yeah,
exactly.
innovations, yes.
Yeah, yeah. If people
Connecting
like, oh
ideas,
wow,
yeah.
yeah, they
Mm.
appreciate that. Oh, this idea has come up from
Mm.
somebody. Well, why not? I include her. And if then talking from the other side, would you want to go and steal people's idea without giving acknowledgement?
Mm.
Will you be able? Are you going to do that? So of course, if you are a
Yeah.
very criminal, then you will do that lah. But most of us won't do that.
Mm.
If you think you have learned from somebody's idea, then you want to cite, you want to acknowledge. So
Yes.
perhaps this worry, as expressed by this respondent, could be because the platform isn't uh,
Mm.
not credible,
As,
or
yeah.
they don't know whether whatever that they put out there is
Mm.
actually is there's a stamp to it. It's a watermark and stamp by the by the contributor, and it cannot be just stolen like that lah.
Because I think the system itself is not
Yeah.
established yet. So the respondents, because they are most are ECR, so they don't really know how the system works. So the
Maybe.
worry is actually, maybe they just thought that we put our data like anywhere on the internet so everyone can download it. Yeah. Maybe that's
Mm,
the worry lah.
yeah.
Mm. Okay, so we proceed with the sub-team number 3 under the same team, which is the striving to be open. So the need for open science to be integrated into existing systems and driven from the top to enable research to be done in collaborative and cooperative way, like we have discussed just now, and with wider audience and researchers, and lead to a more impactful and applicable research. So like we have discussed with Prof. Chu just now, in which that when we are working with open science, we can actually attract more innovative research with collaborators who are even outside of the academia. For example, like those from the industry, so we can actually produce new and great research with wider applications. And another respondents also stated that it would be nice to involve as much of a wide audience as possible. So if if it is research support officers, and there are research office and institution that can actually create the structure around open science. So this specific office or this specific like unit that supports open science can actually raise the awareness, because some of the researchers in a specific institution do not know about the existing or the awareness about the open science. And then in terms of the striving to be open, another respondent actually stated that because they are mostly they are the earlier career researchers, so they firstly they have to focus on how many grants that they have won, or whether they have many publications. So if we want them to participate in this open science, it needs to be recognized in your CV, which that if you have your open science, or if you have data uploaded in the open science platforms, and they need to have this kind of acknowledging, so that the work have been done. Okay, so in terms of the merit, they have to recognize or acknowledge. Okay, so we move on to the discussion of the paper. So in terms of the summary of the main findings, the ability to practice open science behaviors, so it involve a lot of factors. For example, like pressures generated by the current academic incentive structure, research culture within their immediate work environment, which is in the institution, the structures and support such as training and resources for facilitating open science practices, as well as the cooperation across the research community, including other researchers, their funding bodies, and also the wider community that can actually affect the practice of open science behaviors. And in terms of the opportunities provided by open science, so majority of the respondents agreed that open science can improve the research quality, increase research visibility and also dissemination, and also it can lead to a greater availability and accessibility of research data and outputs, which increase the potential for developing new collaborations. And also in terms of the pre-registration, like Prof. Chu has mentioned, the registered report or the protocol registration can actually offer a path to publication irrespective of findings. Because when we register a protocol, it can actually, other people can cite our protocol, so it can actually increase our publication and also our citation metrics. And when being asked about the disadvantage of open science, some respondents said that they are the feeling of exposed and vulnerable in publishing their research materials and data, because due to the fear of being stolen, fear of being spotted, making mistakes, and also the concerns and mixed feelings in relation to data sharing and making patient data available, especially when the research involves patients in healthcare or in medical research. Okay, so in terms of the open science culture, in terms of cultivating or improving the culture of open science, so firstly, when being asked is in terms of the lack of career incentive, especially when being asked about the practice of systems that reward open science behavior are rare, and open science involvement is often not formally recognized and sometimes discouraged due to the fear that we have mentioned in the previous slides. Okay, and then in terms of the subscription to funding and training and education events and resources was identified by ECR in our study as vital by facilitating open science at a more basic level in terms of providing the training, especially among the early career researchers. And then in terms of the need for change, so the need for cultural change and a shift in institutional reward system towards valuing open science practices on a more complex level. So this is not within the researchers, but on a bigger scale, especially within the institutional reward system itself. And then lastly is the system change. So open science will never be achieved unless accompanied by a change in the way researchers are evaluated. So this is also in related with the metrics on how research is being evaluated, um, rather than or except or is beyond the publication metrics itself. Okay, so when being asked about the implication for practice, policy, and research, first is the support systems. So the support system is within the institution and also beyond the institution. For example, like training events, education and resources to improve open science awareness, knowledge and skills for researchers. And number two is the top-down and bottom-up approach. So approaches are needed from all stakeholders, including research funders, university and institutional management, and individual researchers at all levels. And lastly is to revisit the metrics in which that research and its output are measured, how researchers are being hired, how the promotion process system, and also the engagement in open science activities. So I think this is the policy and also implication of practice that the leaders of research institution, specific research institutions have to look up in terms of cultivating the open science culture in their institutions. Do you have
How much
any additional points for this, Prof?
how much do you agree with these suggestions? Or which one do you want to prioritize? Or which one
Hmm.
we can do first?
I think in terms of within the researcher level, individual level, it can be in terms of this support system in which that as for the researcher themselves, they have to um, get themselves being familiarized with the open science and what are the steps that they can take in terms of supporting or involving in this open science or improving their own knowledge and skills in open science. Because
Yeah,
I think the top down or the revisiting metrics is more on the institutional part, right? So not sure whether we can actually push the higher
mm,
ups on this. Yeah.
yeah. How about the audience? Would you have any strong feeling about any point that has been presented? Let's wait for a while and
Yeah.
see anyone. As what Iman was saying is that,
Mm,
of course, if there are good trainings made
mm,
available, so people can attend, can get trained, isn't it?
yes.
If you leave it to all the early career researcher, or not to say just early, any researcher, if you leave it to themselves, then it'll be more difficult, lah, isn't it? They have to go and find the resources and have to spend
Yes.
time. Of course, like all the conferences, so when the people organize conferences, we go and sit and you get to hear and learn. Of course, that make it easier, lah. There's no doubt about it. Uh,
Mm,
and even that also requires some motivation, personal motivation to go and attend, isn't it? And more so
yes.
if you have to do it yourself. Okay. If trying to put all this together, do we do we have to do something just because we are going to be incentivized?
Mm,
Do we have to be that
yeah.
materialistic, so called? Uh, why not?
Mm,
Yeah, people would think, why not? Why
mm,
should I do it for free? Or
mm,
is it fair if I spend times on doing all this open science? No, all of us got 24 hours. And you see, my colleague next door never care about all this. And what if he or she got promoted
mm,
1 year earlier? What if 2 years earlier? 5 years earlier? Can you bear with that? So that fairness will come in.
mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
But back to my first question, that do you are you happy to be promoted without supporting open science, or without being a good researcher in the first place? Are you Do you have the glory of being so-called senior professor if you don't know how to support open science, don't know how to do good research. Is there no shame? Is there no shame at all? Is getting the promotion is everything in the world for you? So back to my first question, isn't it? So are you going to do just the right thing because it's incentivized, and you're not going to do it because it's not worth it? So the worth come from where, isn't it? The worth come from higher pay, promoted, professorship. You don't care about the rest, or so if you put it to the other extreme, then it become what? Become altruism lah. You don't care what you get. You going to burn yourself, sacrifice yourself just for the good purpose. Is that so as well? How long can you last? Do
Yes.
you not have family that you need to put food on the tables? You don't have car that you need to pump oil inside it. Yeah. So then that's the tension of being a researcher, and actually in fact being a human, isn't it? There's always this tension of doing good without paid for it, or being a bad person, just go for where the good thing for yourself, you don't care about the rest. So there are all sort of people in the society, isn't it? You of course you have the few lucky ones, so called, who are actually really good and really get promoted or get what he deserves. Yeah, and then you can see the other two extreme lah. Those who don't get anything that he deserves, and then those who get everything he does not deserve, isn't it? Yeah. So I really leave it open here, and or it's actually your personal choice lah. Yeah, how much you can take it at one end, and how much you only want to act after you're being incentivized. Yeah. So live according to your conscience lah, that kind of thing lah. Yeah. So I hope your conscience is clear and conscience is strong and good lah. So in bahasa, in Malay it says what? Hati nurani, isn't it? Your hati nurani, yeah. You also you do well. If you think you have only what all the benefits in this life, so go for it lah. You don't have other life, isn't it? Kalau sudah mati sudah habis, so I don't blame you lah. But you think you got other life, then you better watch out lah, isn't it? Mm. So sorry, it's beyond scientific. So this is metaphysical. Meta science lah, beyond science already. But we can't run from it. Yeah, science you can't do science because humans are on metaphysical meta science. Back to you, Ima.
Okay. Okay, so I think this slide is what Prof. Chu has mentioned. So as an early career researcher, or I think as a researcher in general, because we just want to start on this open science initiative. So what can we do within the individual is first to get active by seeking out others interested in practicing open science. So maybe like Prof. Chu has mentioned, if it's not being incentivized, or if it's not being rewarded, so maybe we can just find our gang, like hobby, right? So we don't really get incentive for our hobby, we don't really get paid for doing our hobby, so we just can get active, like cari gang and build an open science community through grassroots initiatives, and get vocal by using these platforms only when you have your community to lobby and engage with institutional management. So this is how you can bring your voice out to the ethics committees around data sharings, and in terms of the libraries regarding the open access and open publishing policies, and also when you have enough voice, you can bring this up to the university promotion committees, and get inquisitive by conducting research on research that would facilitate and promote open research practices, such as addressing sensitive data of data sharings, or identify evidence-based ways of balancing ethics with data transparency. Or even you can start small, like what is your opinion, or what is your current awareness or knowledge on the research communities or the researchers in your institutions on the open science itself. Okay, do you agree with this, Prof? Or do you have
Total,
more to add on? Yeah.
uh, not for now.
Okay.
Yeah, very good suggestion.
Mm, mm. Okay, so for the strength and limitations of this study, so the strength in this study, so they actually involve participants that were in a position to provide substantial depth and richness of insight into an underexplored area of research in which related with open science, because we can see that those who attended the workshop related with open science could actually have this some sort of motivation or passion in learning about open science. So they actually involve those participants who actually can provide them the necessary data that can be valuable in this qualitative data analysis. But somehow this can also be a delay. Their delimitation in which that their study is a subsample in which that they may not really represent the whole or the other early career researchers which may not know about the open science. And in terms of the sample number, there is also no justification on sample size and data saturation in which that they only invited those who are actually interested to participate in the mixed method study. And in terms of the analysis plan, the de-identification of qualitative data was not done due to size and unique sample of the study, in which that the research team knows who they are actually interviewing, and they also know who the data belongs to. However, the data was only shared within their research team and was not shared beyond the members of the research teams.
Okay. Perhaps I just want to say something.
Mm.
Okay. So every papers, clinical research, including this one, there's no perfect research. Even though you uh if you do a multi-center, you got to data saturation is better. But
Mm.
again, in the interpretations, we want to be careful. Like say for this paper, you always want to refer back to the respondent characteristic tables. And you know that this paper actually asks about, remember the topic guides? So they ask about what it is and why is it
Mm.
important.
Mm.
So if you have a different topic guide, you want to assess why people don't understand about uh, open science, and why don't you do open science, all that. It may not be right respondents, study samples, because these are those who already attended workshop, so they know already,
Yes.
so they have been trained.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
However, this paper is okay, it's good to me because they actually
Mm.
wanted the positive side of it. So you must have some knowledge about it, then you can discuss. Yeah. If you want to ask about something that is in the general public, really,
Mm.
why don't you understand? Why don't you support open science? Then I think they should go to someone who don't want to come to the workshop because they don't support open science in the first place.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, to
correct.
interview
Yeah.
those people. Yeah, so it's very important. I know they have this in mind. That's why they approach those participants to their workshop. Yeah.
Mm.
Otherwise, I think if they are really qualitative research trained, they
Mm.
wouldn't ask the workshop participants on the questions that they ask now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Or Prof, if we were to actually repeat the similar study, would it be better if we actually do like a proper quantitative study, like we calculate our sample size among those early career researchers and we get like around, for example, like we get 150, and then we actually ask them about their knowledge, awareness on open science, and then we selected from that 150, we selected a group of people who actually wanted to participate in the qualitative study to provide a more deeper data. Would it be better?
Yeah. Why not? Isn't it? But I
Mm,
think before
mm.
your questions, you want to criticize or praise. How does the mixed method in this study, how does the mixed method study design in this study necessary, and how have the both quantitative and qualitative data being, they say, convergent? How do
Yes.
these two converge? Did you noted how they
Mm.
converge, the two data, the two types of data?
I think it only provides a deeper explanation on what we can find from the survey analysis, from the survey results. because it's more or less the same, but then it provides a more like a deeper like explanation on what they found on the survey results. Not like a really a convergence, like a interpretation lah. To just provide a deeper findings, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I agree.
Yeah. In the
We
paper
don't see.
itself, yes, in the paper itself, it says that it's supposed to be analyzed in triangulation method, right? But then it was not done for this paper. So they just analyze the quantitative data descriptively, and then they analyze the qualitative data in thematic analysis.
If you are strong in that opinion, do you think this paper could also stand on its own without the quantitative part of it?
I
The
think
one that
yes.
you showed just now,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Because it does not seem to contribute to the qualitative
Sure.
part of it.
Yes.
Because that
Yes.
table you show about knowledge, awareness, all that, it's just like
Mm.
around 10 respondents only.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I also not cannot be very sure how they have made use of that. But sometimes, in mixed method, they should have, when they're interviewing the respondent, they would actually open up, bring out the questionnaire survey that is answered by the respondent, and then they ask, based on the topic guide, they ask the respondent according to their responses to the survey as well. But it
Mm.
wasn't explained whether this was done, and how does that survey responses from each of the respondent when the interview, how does that make a difference? So
Mm.
it
Yes.
seems
Yes.
like even without that questionnaire survey,
Mm.
just the
Yes.
quali would do. However, uh, so it is not clear in the paper, but it's actually quite potentially useful. Is that if they have, could you put out the survey again? So now, if you try to compare, now you have heard Iman presented on the qualitative part. Now, if you look back to their survey questions, so first you want to think whether is this survey necessary, and two, if it's necessary, how does that contribute to the whole uh, study design? Is a mixed method.
Mm.
Although we know that conducting the survey is very easy, perhaps this can be done within half an hour. Yeah.
Yes. Because I think most of the points in the survey findings also being discussed in the qualitative findings. So without the quantitative part of the study, it can also stand on its own as a qualitative study. So not really sure how this data actually converge with the qualitative findings.
Yeah. Could it
Mm.
sometimes it's also possible that they use the survey findings to develop the topic guide?
It is not stated in the paper
It's not
because
mentioned, right?
yeah, it's not mentioned because it's only mentioned that the topic guide was developed by the researcher themselves, not from the quantitative findings.
Yeah. I
Mm.
suspecting that because they conducted the interview like within 3 weeks after the workshop. Why not they do it during the workshop itself? They can just spend, another half a day
Mm.
on FGD or in-depth interview, because there are just 14 of them, and it just take half an hour. You have 2 3 researcher, then it can be done during the workshop itself. But we cannot assume all this is being done, and the justification to actually design this study as a mixed method has to be really really necessary. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
otherwise, you see the survey is so small numbers, and the very selected group of respondents, they are not going to be useful at all to
Mm.
explain the level of knowledge or the level of awareness, or the levels of perceived facilitator barriers in the early career researcher. Not at all. Nothing
Mm.
is conclusive at all from just
Mm.
14 people. If it's
Yes.
so, then why in the first place you want to conduct the survey? If it's
Mm.
not, mixed method and multi method, and I think most of us are not very sure, because sometimes it's quite gray also. Multi methods that you are have two different, like say a survey and a qualitative interview side by side, and they don't actually come together. One does not cross over to another because they don't contribute anything. Then it's a multi-method. But when they say it's a mixed method, one here from one study design here survey, it
To
has to
another.
then go into
Yes.
contributed to the other to the other part of it. So I'm not so sure it's clear enough in the way they report it. They did mention like they do a pre and post workshop as an evaluation, isn't it? So it's likely that this
Yes.
is like how much knowledge has improved after the workshop.
Mm.
It's a
Yeah,
pre and
maybe.
post, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
many
pre
of
and
us
post evaluation. Yes.
for the workshop evaluation.
Mm.
But how does this exactly being used in their qualitative research part? I don't know. I can't
Mm.
make it out. I don't know how
Yes.
how how is it. I just mentioned a few possibility, but not sure, it's not stated by the authors themselves. If it's not
Mm.
answered, then it's not so correct to name this paper study design as a mixed method. Yeah, because the survey does not actually contribute to the qualitative part of the research.
Yes.
And one you suggested, the one you suggested, why not we conduct a larger survey, isn't it?
Mm. A larger survey, yes, a larger quantitative survey to
Quantitative
actually
survey.
see, yeah, to see actually the knowledge, awareness. Because I think because those participated or those attended the workshop actually have initial or like a baseline knowledge on open science. So of course they can provide those information needed in the qualitative survey.
And who is that speaking?
I think they forgot to mute.
Can you mute them if they are not speaking to the floor? There's no need to that.
Okay.
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 Right. So yes and
Yeah.
no.
Mm.
Yes and no. Yes is that it's good, always good if you have a very good sample size of kind of survey.
Yes.
Then we would actually be able to conclude it's
Mm.
conclusive lah, meaning to say that we may be able to tell for sure what would be the perceived whatever about open science.
Mm.
Uh, but the qualitative benefits of the study design is that you can go in depth,
Mm.
like what is being expressed by the respondent in this study. If you don't interview, then all you get is a similar response lah, to all these barriers,
Descriptive
and
data.
only tell
Yes.
this many, this many, this many thing this way, this many thing that way. But then that uh, in-depth meanings to each of these items, then we wouldn't be sure. And the mixed method can come in usually is that either you do a quali first, then you get like you do all the coding, like what we did for developing a new questionnaire. We
Yes.
are also going to have that workshop also or web
Mm.
seminar on how you can develop a new questionnaire or just culturally adapted it. So you can do a quali first just to make sure that we capture uh, so-called if you have in plan a survey, then you want the questionnaire to be so-called content validity. You
Mm.
want the questionnaire to have content validity on a certain topic. So if it's preceded by a qualitative study, then you're quite sure your questionnaire item would have, all the important topics or key points that you are going to send out to survey regarding open science, for example. Yeah. So if you are not 100% sure, of course cannot be 100% sure, cannot be very sure, the questionnaire that you develop would actually cover all the perceived topics in open science, then you better do a quali first. However, you think you're very pretty sure that I think there are nothing else that can be left out with this questionnaire, then 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 you be very sure about it. And of course, you want to also have good support from the literature that these are the possible whatever knowledge, awareness, facilitators or barriers. Then it's fine. Then just send out lah. And just do a survey.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So again, my last point will be it depends. It depends on the research topic that you are going to research on. If that research topic does not require a very in-depth meaning to it, then is usually it's fine. Just conduct a survey that you want to know how broad of something that can be defined clearly, like prevalent or incidence of diseases. But if you want to know exactly what could be the issues at hand, then perhaps a qualitative research will be necessary. Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
back to you.
Okay, so this is on the appraisal tool, on the mixed method appraisal tool, MMAT. So for the first question, is there an adequate rationale for using a mixed method design to address the research question? So at first, I think it's a yes, but after our discussion, I
Maybe not
don't know
now, isn't
anymore.
it?
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, because the qualitative itself can stand on its own. And are the different components of the study effectively integrated to answer the research question? Because the research questions can actually be answered by both. So I think it's a yes, but in terms of the rationale, whether we really need to use mixed method is, I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
still can't tell or
yeah,
no,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's not very clear
right,
how they have integrate the two quantity and quality data.
right, yeah. And are the outputs of integration of qualitative and quantitative components adequately interpreted? I think it's adequately interpreted, but because it, the qualitative itself can stand on its own. So yes,
Yeah, agree with
yeah.
you.
And are divergence and inconsistencies between quantitative and qualitative results adequately addressed? So I think this is also unsure about this because I think there are no inconsistencies or divergence because it actually reveals or yields the same results.
We the
Yeah,
quantity one is too small. We will not be able to
yeah.
tell whether they are true
Mm,
divergent or inconsistency. And the quality one, they have not tried to achieve data saturation. So we wouldn't be able to tell that they will be continue to have divergence or
yeah.
inconsistency opinion. So perhaps they can't tell or no lah.
Mm. And do the different components of the study adhere to the quality criteria of each tradition of the methods involved in which that whether the different components, the components of quantity and qualitative study were conducted properly? So I think it's a no because like Prof mentioned just now, it's about the sample size. So we really cannot tell whether
Yeah.
it reached to the quality, yeah, criteria itself. Okay, so I think that's all for our today's MGH. Do you have last words, Prof, before we end the session?
So every time when we criticize or appraise any paper, we seems to be like, like we know all, but that's not what we intended to. It's actually we have to uh, understand every paper on their own merits lah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So for this study, I think it has its own merit because it actually have at least study some of the early career researchers' opinions about what they think about uh, practicing open science, and so they have recorded what we think are the so-called known facilitator and barriers. No, have you learned anything new? Nothing new, isn't it?
Hmm.
Nothing new. Um, Nothing new at all. I know all that. But if I know all that, just me, I know all that. And where do I know all that? I learn and I think so based on my experience. But it's different from personal opinion. Scientific research, like this paper, has actually collected data scientifically and they recorded it, reported it. That's why scientific papers, though they present common sense, is still of value. Yeah, so that people would you will not be just saying, this is what I think. No, it's not what I think is valuable. It's actually what the study has actually shown. But the we have to give merit according to the merit of it is that these are the so-called study samples, and just from them, these are the findings. Yeah. So be fair in our appraisal. So, and also not to be overtaken by any papers because it has been published is definitely of high value, not necessary. It's all come back to our interpretations, and whenever you quote or cite a paper, so just bear in mind how the study was conducted and completed. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Prof. Chu, for the commentaries and also insight on the paper that you have appraised for today. So thank you, everyone, for your participation in our MJH.